Hey, if you're thinking, I barely have time to write, let alone start a podcast, I got you. My Start Your Author podcast checklist helps busy writers like you start a podcast without sacrificing your writing time. No more guessing or Googling. Starting is actually the easiest part of podcasting. And with this step-by-step checklist, you can fit it in over the next 6 weeks or even next weekend. Stop letting uncertainty hold you back. Grab your free checklist at the link below and get on your way to serving your target readers today. Are you self-publishing a book this year and a little overwhelmed by all the cost to edit, format, design, write copy, and actually publish the book online? If so, I can't wait for you to meet my new friend, Ashley Shepard, author of Profitable Publishing with Preorders: How to Grow Your Audience, Pre-Sell Your Book, and Cover Costs Before Self-Publishing. Ooh, I just love Ashley's book so much. Her and I met a while back on social media as I immediately spotted her as an incredible resource to help me on my own self-publishing journey. So from creative pre-order bonuses to behind-the-scenes marketing tips, Ashley's here to unpack how you can successfully launch your book, attract raving fans, and grow your platform without going into debt. Ooh, I'm here for it, y'all. I hope you are too. You are in for a treat today, so let's get to it. Hey, Ashley, welcome to Book Marketing Mania. I'm so thrilled you're here today to serve my listeners.
Hey, Kim, I'm so excited to be here. I know we took some time kind of making this work, but that means it's going to be worth it to whoever is able to actually catch this episode.
Yeah, so true. So, Ashley, for those that may not even be aware of pre-orders and how they work, and I know it's different if you're a traditional publisher or, you're self-publishing, but can you just talk through first what profitable publishing means to you?
Yeah. So first, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. So from the context the lens that I kind of use is the mindset that as an author, regardless of if you're traditionally published, self-published, and independently published, you have the ability to publish profitably. So you have the ability to be able to make your money back from your investment, from your publishing costs, marketing costs, whatever that may be, before your book is actually released. And that's something I've done 4 times myself, and also support my author clients to be able to do that as well. And I really just want to flip the concept of, authors have to be broke, or the whole starving artist concept, because I just don't believe that, since I've seen it done and I've done it multiple times.
Yeah.
And just from the standpoint of, we deserve to be paid for our work, being an author, and really being an artist in general, but being an author, there's this misconception that, you shouldn't be paid for your work. You shouldn't be wanting to make more than a few dollars or a few pennies from copies of your book, because I'm not sure if you know, but typically most authors are only making less than $1, depending upon what kind of book it is, upwards of maybe $10 from a book, and $10 on the high end. So maybe you have a book that costs a little bit more, or for example, I have a cookbook from my other business and I make more of that per book, but it's because I've been very intentional about making a profit from them. And also, I really focus on the concept of focusing on profit from the standpoint of greed, or not from putting it over people, but really understanding that if your goal as an author is to make an impact, or if you want to reach a certain number of people, because that's a phrase that I hear with my author clients or people that I see online is, I want to get my book out there, or I want to sell copies. And so you really want to think, okay, well, if your goal is to get your book in front of a large audience, or if your goal is to get your book out there, you have to have profit in order to make that happen. You have to use it to pay for your cover designer, or to have somebody support you as a virtual assistant or a PA. You have to be able to pay the people that are helping you run your book business. And you can't do that if you're not making a profit from the start. So
Yeah, that's so good. And I know I talk to so many people, that we do think like we're called to share this message, and we kind of get into a ministry mindset, which is a great one to have. But with that mindset, I feel like we often think, profit, that word alone is like, oh, I'm just writing this book to make money. But yet, God called me to write this book to share a message. And I
Right.
love how you break that down because it's like, it is flipping that mindset. It's not just I'm writing this to make money. I'm looking at it really strategically of what can I do to make money so that I can publish this book, and share my message farther, because I know that's what a lot of people talk about is just all the expenses you don't realize you're going to have to incur. And even if you're traditionally publishing, you still have to incur them for marketing. So there's always things that the authors have to incur that they may not know about. And, your book is just amazing, Ashley. And I talked about it in my introduction. And I mean, I just love that it just goes through this concept, but then it really is, spells out the steps, and you have amazing graphics in there. I mean, it's just everything. Here's boom, 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 how to do it. Every question you can think of, I love is in your book. So I definitely want to share that. Like I could just end the recording right now and tell everybody just go buy the book. But let's talk about because I have witnessed you launching this book, selling the book, whatever you want to call it. But I've been so blown away by, because you have kept that your focus is, I mean, you wrote the book on it, but you have also given us a great example of what that looks like, to have, these pre-orders coming through ahead of time. And it's always about, what is going to help me, the reader. And
Mhm.
so, talk to us a little bit about that. Also that philosophy of, I'm going into it with, I want to make a profit from my pre-orders so I can pay for my expenses, right? And that's
Right.
my focus versus I'm just focused on selling books because I want the cute little graphic on Amazon that says I'm a bestseller. So talk us through those, how you weigh those against each other, I guess, if you will.
Yeah. And so thank you so much for the compliments for the book. I have a background as an educator, so 10 years in the classroom. So that's all the graphics and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Really making sure it's visually appealing. And you got the color copy. So
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I feel so special. It's so
yeah.
pretty.
So I do the color copy on my website for now, and then the black and white over on Amazon and other retailers. And so, yeah. So when it comes to selling your book, first of all, even the concept of releasing a book, most authors focus on the publishing side and they don't focus on the actual marketing side. And we met over on Threads, and often over there, I hear authors say, "Oh, I hate marketing. Marketing's the bane of my existence, yada, yada." And I think marketing is actually more fun than publishing. I know that might be weird for some, but to me, with publishing, as long as you do the steps, you're going to get a book. Like, you're going to get the results. With marketing, you have more creativity, you have more variety of different things you can do and ways to kind of get people involved. And so I thought, okay, let me flip this on its head. And also, when I think about it, marketing is what sells the books. And
Uh-huh.
so, yes, you release a book, but if nobody knows that it's out, nobody knows when it's released, nobody knows that process, then it makes it a lot harder to make sales. And so that's why I thought it was really important for this particular book launch to bring readers behind the scenes and to do things such as a pop-up podcast. And that was my first podcast I had done myself. And for context, for those that are listening, the pop-up podcast was a case study of the book launch. And it
Uh-huh.
was a very meta experience of okay, this is the book launch. You're learning about the book launch while it's happening. And then also I'm taking you through my sales that are happening, through the back end of how I actually was able to make the profit. And to me, for the reader, going back to what you're talking about, how do you keep the reader at your focus? To me, the reader is the one that you're even writing the book for. So I know that's another kind of possibly controversial statement, but it really shouldn't be, because your book is for your reader. If your goal is to make a profit, if your goal is to even break even, if your goal is to get that bestseller status or whatever accolades are, if they're outside of yourself, outside of, oh, I just want to write this book, which that's totally fine. But if you are someone who's I really want to make sure that this book reaches tons of folks, then you have to focus on your reader. You have to take the time to think about and consider what kind of things they would like, what kind of things they wouldn't like, what kind of things they would think are interesting. And I talk about that throughout the book, but heavily in chapter 5 with my Raving Fans framework to really understand how to find your readers, to attract your readers, to nurture them, and then also to shout them out and celebrate them when they do things like give reviews or
Uh-huh.
picture your book. Because at the end of the day, your book is a business, your book is helping you build your brand. And that's a very common misconception that I see that authors have, is they just think, oh, I'm just releasing this book and then I'm going to post about it a couple times and then people will buy it, which often that's not the case.
Right.
You have to bring people on a journey. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, if I'm spending all this time and energy to do this book launch and release this book. Why not get paid in the process? Wait months, years, however long from from initial writing to releasing the book, and then waiting an additional amount of time to get paid when I can literally pay myself through this process by doing pre-orders.
Yeah.
And so that's largely where the concept comes from. And it's something I've done 4 times, like I mentioned before. The first time I did it, I had a 6-month-old. It was the start of the pandemic. I was a teacher. I had just gotten a pay cut, $5,000 pay cut, because I just had a baby, and I'm in Georgia. And typically in the United States, unless your company has amazing healthcare, you're going to get a pay cut. And so I didn't have the funds from like household money to be able to pay for my book for moms to be released. And so I said, okay, I got to figure something out because I need to write this book. I'm trapped in the house with this baby, and
Yeah.
I was there too. But it's different when you have a kid and
Yeah.
this child, and then look, here's a global pandemic. Let's sprinkle that on top of everything you have going on. And so I was like, I got to figure it out. And so I started doing research and started understanding more of the pre-sales, pre-orders, things like that. And then I was able to make $1,400 with a 6-week pre-sale. And so for me, that was enough to cover my publishing costs, and I made
Yeah.
$800 profit on the within that $1,400. So kind of like financing my own self-publishing through the process. And I still was able to get those bestseller status and accolades and things like that people are also excited about. But at the end of the day, it wasn't something that was as important because my main goal was I needed that book for myself because I was a new mom. The book's for new moms. And then also I knew I needed it to be paid for. But at the same time, through that and through the next 3 books I released, including this one, I was able to see how much this can impact others. I wasn't aware that people were going into like thousands of dollars of debt to release books repeatedly over and over for multiple books. I was very new to the author world. And so I think that was beneficial because I didn't have kind of the jaded mindset of, I'm never going to make my money back from this book, or I
Uh-huh.
have to wait years to make my money back from this book. And so not that. And I like what you said earlier about, especially being a believer, it can be very tricky to find that balance because obviously we're here for a purpose. We're here to support people. But even inside of church, like church needs ministry to do things. You need ministry to feed the homeless. You need ministry to be able to help people who are in tough financial times. And so you as an author, if your goal is that you want to help people, you have to have some type of income to be able to support that. Just point blank period. And so with that, I don't typically focus on those bestseller statuses or those hot new releases. I share them,
Yeah.
but that's not been my focus because I know that when you really look on the back end and when you really look at the analytics, often that's not actually equating to a ton of book sales because it really depends on what category you're in, depends on how many other books are sold that hour because it changes every hour. And so instead of trying to reach a moving target, I know, okay, if I sell this number of books or I enroll people into this many slots in my program that's associated with my book, then I know I can get this outcome and then I can reach this many folks. And then I can also use it as a case study to tell other people like, hey, you can do this too. So that's the approach that I take.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's so good, and just knowing that there's other things you can do to get that bestseller status. You don't have to be day one, and yeah, just you talking about if people going into a debt. I mean, I've heard so many stories about and this is more the early days. It's a little bit different now, but like authors would have like a stack of books in their garage, that they've had to get, and it's like they can't sell them, and then yeah, just the cost of the cover and the copywriting and the formatting, like all those things add up. So you want to have a plan and not just think, well, I'll pay for it and somehow, pay for it afterwards. Right. So I think
Right.
that's so, so smart. And I love how you talk about the marketing because it is such a huge piece of it. And that is, you and I both just love marketing. And I talk about it often. It's just, in my mind, it's just helping people, right? You're just helping them. And I know I wrote down this quote and I keep it in front of me all the time, Ashley, that you said on Threads one day, but it was, instead of convincing people to buy your book, attract those who need your book, but just don't know about you yet. And I was just like, oh my God, mic drop. Like I swear I look at it all the time because I like, you just have to keep remembering that, because it is like that marketing and sales. That's what we think of. It's just like, oh, it's this gross, slimy thing. We're just out there going,
Yeah.
buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. But it's like, no, think about it this way. And I love that because it kind of feeds into podcasting and guest podcasting. You can get in front of those people. But gosh, I could just, go on a tangent about that because I love that you put that on Threads. And that's just an example of what you're always putting out there. You're just helping people in these little, little tidbits, but it's like, oh, I needed to hear that today. Or, maybe you're making me aware of something that I didn't know was coming up on my publishing journey, but yeah, you do such a great job of that. And I was so happy to see you doing it way before your book came out, So I think that's another, and I'm sure you've probably learned that with many books is,
Mhm.
if you wait until after it comes out, you can still market it, but it's so much easier, right? To get started earlier and get people on board because sometimes it takes them a while, right? To make that decision to buy books. So I'd love anything more you have to add about that, just how to start attracting the readers earlier and earlier because it may take them longer to make the decision, but in a way that's not buy my book, right? How can we start talking about it more?
Yeah, and so I love what you said about how marketing is just like an invitation, and sometimes it doesn't even have to be an invitation. Like, I don't typically say, "Buy my book," and that's a concept that I'm like, that's what most authors say is, "Buy my book."
Uh-huh.
And I equate it to, especially if you're on Facebook, you might have friends from high school or from college, and you like see their family grow up over the years because you just happen to still be friends. And you're like, oh, okay, they're graduating from pre-K. My son just graduated from pre-K.
Oh,
Oh my gosh, Jeremy just graduated from college. Now he's going to da da da, or he's going to do this. You've probably never met that person's child a day in your life, but you've watched them on their journey. And so there's times where you, not in a weird way, but you become like, oh, okay, I like to see the updates because you're like, oh, I know this person, I know their kid has an extension. And so your book is like that child. Your book is a baby, and you are helping it grow, helping it to be able to flourish, to be able to let people know, like, hey, okay, I have this coming out. This is the behind the scenes of what I'm working on. And eventually, that book child is going to get up and walk and have its own legs, and it's going to sell itself. But you have to give it the right foundation in order to do that. And you have to understand that it's not just going to do it on its own. Even people who are rich and famous, they're still marketing their books. So, for example,
yeah.
a couple days ago, I saw Michelle Obama. She is doing a book of all like her wardrobe that she wore during. I think it was during the presidency. It might be beyond that time, but and she was opening up pre-sales, and I'm like, hello, like,
Yeah.
former
Yeah.
a former first lady, she is still having pre-orders. Hello, this is a proven concept. You have to look at the other people who are in our industries that, and even authors, because they often, even traditionally published authors, typically do pre-orders. And so you have to think, okay, these people have multi-million dollar companies, they have multi-million dollar pre-R firms, and all these other people that are behind them, backing them, saying that you need to do a pre-order and you need to go on this press tour and you need to do XYZ. Why
Hmm.
would you not take advantage of that opportunity? Even if it's on a smaller level, because maybe your goals and aspirations are not as big as theirs, but it validates it that you can't just pop up and say, buy my book the day that it's released and expect to get hundreds of thousands of sales. And
Yeah.
in the same sense, these people could do that. They could pop up and then people would still buy it. So it's like, if they're doing that and they still are taking the time, you should take the time too. And so I do have a video over my YouTube about when to start your marketing, because I was
Uh-huh.
that's something that is probably challenging for folks because they think, oh, well, my book's not done. So I'm a scammer if I'm telling people about it beforehand,
Uh-huh.
or they get so overwhelmed with the publishing process. And so I always like to say, for especially specifically for your pre-order and your launch, it should be long enough to get the word out, but short enough to where you're not going to get burnt out.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
so that could look like even having like over the shoulder camera views of, I'm drafting this chapter. And then just like you mentioned, the quote, picking those impactful quotes from your book and picking things that are the strategies and tips without giving away the whole thing, even though you could
Uh-huh.
definitely give away the whole thing and people would still buy your book. There's studies that showed that. And picking those ones that you know that your audience is having a little bit of blindsidedness on, or they're having a little bit of hesitation about, and being that coach in their head without actually being that coach in their head,
Uh-huh.
giving them those tidbits along the way. And then also another great tip is, if you have to take out some of parts of your book, like I know with editing, that's my least favorite part of publishing, but with editing, sometimes things get chopped or they end up needing to go somewhere else.
Uh-huh.
That as content, like use it into a reel, turn it into a long form post on LinkedIn, into a LinkedIn article, whatever fits with your audience. Because at the end of the day, all of this is building trust for your reader. It's helping them to know that your book is a solution to their problem. And it helps you to be able to continue to stay within kind of the marketing mindset and within the book publishing mindset without just saying, buy my book. So,
Uh-huh.
of course, still have your call to action. Of course, like say, oh, if you want more of this, I talk about this in chapter 10 of my book, check it out. or things of that sort, because it can be easy to just feel like I don't know what to post, or I don't know what to share, or I don't know what to send an email about. And if you have a book, you have a bazillion ideas of things that you
Mm-hmm.
post, even to the point where you can take your chapters and make live streams about them. So in chapter 3, I talk about 5 lessons for authors to learn, and it talks about focusing on the wrong numbers. And so talking about, for example, the bestseller status, like you
Uh-huh.
mentioned, whereas I don't necessarily focus on that or focus on checking my KDP dashboard 50 million times a day. And no shade if you do, but
Yeah.
I mean, I check once a month now
Uh-huh.
after a book is launched. If it's the first couple weeks or whatever, I'll check more often. But at this point, I'm not checking for books that have been released in 2020 or things like that.
Yeah.
So it has 6 lessons to learn as an author toward profit. And
Okay.
so each of those different lessons, I can then take that and do a live stream about that. And I have with them about, okay, well, you're focusing on bestseller status. Actually, here are some other metrics you should focus on if your goal is profit. Or lesson 3 is talking about how Amazon isn't the best option for pre-orders. And I actually probably will do a live stream on that this week, because I know there will be some daggers and folks line up
Yeah.
work saying, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Use Amazon. And it's something where it has its merits, but if you are focused on getting that customer data, which we know is so important, to be able to communicate with your customers, to be able to build this launch experience that you saw, a lot of that happened because I was able to email my customers. I was able to,
Uh-huh.
hey, follow me on social media. I was able to let them do that right from the start, as opposed to waiting until they got my book in their hands after Amazon shipped those pre-orders. And so, really just taking a look at your book and taking a step back to think, what is it that my reader would be interested in? And then also, people are kind of inherently nosy, and not in a bad
Mm-hmm.
way,
Yeah. Yeah.
but they like to see what you're doing. And so, doing a video of like packaging up your orders, or I just posted one earlier today asking folks if a reposted one, which reposting, another thing, reposting previous content, if it's in alignment with your book and with your book's objective, that works too. I reposted a video about asking people, do they sign their beta reader copies?
Uh-huh.
Or even asking, do you even give physical beta reader copies? Because that's a topic too of
Yeah. Yeah.
now
I
beta
love
readers.
those.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So,
I think that like these are such creative ideas for, getting online and marketing it for anybody, to think about like, how can you start that earlier? Can I also ask you though, Ashley? So we're looking at that, like we're going to have to do that no matter what. Like authors have got to start talking about their books and talking about it in different ways and bringing the readers along a journey. But what are some things? So when we talk about profitable pre-orders, what are some things for our audience that writes nonfiction books, mostly, I would say like Christian living, or maybe it's about mental health, some kind of like daily struggle. And
mhm.
they're writing a nonfiction book about, hey, how to help their readers through that struggle. I mean, I know you talk about this in the book, so I don't want to go into detail because I want everybody to read your book and get their own ideas. But like just off the cuff, what would you think of for some pre order bonuses to entice people to order the book early so that you can make that profit?
Yeah. So the fact that the people that you mentioned are all people that have something that could potentially have a relatively easy upsell
Uh
to a
huh.
product or service, or something that's going to further support the person to implement the strategies, is key. I think it's so easy to just assume that, oh, people just want my book. No, they want all the other things that are associated with you or associated with your brand to be able to help them actually get the results. Because typically, most people don't read the books that they buy. Actually was doing some research and I saw that there's a Japanese word for this. I don't speak Japanese, so I'm not going to butcher it.
Uh
It's a concept of people just buy books because they're aspirational and they
huh.
make them feel as if they're going to do something. So, whatever thing you can associate with it to be able to help them actually get the work done that your
Uh
book
huh.
describes or your book shows them. So, for example, if it's like a guided journal, and I have a devotional on the Daniel fast and then a cookbook on the Daniel fast, and so familiar with the faith-based industry, but having something that's like a challenge. So, okay, well, if your journal supports them for 90 days, okay, well, maybe you don't want to do the whole 90 days, but maybe let's have a challenge with your journal. Like, let's check in. What did you talk about? What Bible verses helped you to be able to overcome this thing, XYZ? Having a meetup to be able to facilitate that, or even encouraging people to use your book as a resource for small groups. And maybe you provide some additional resources for them if they buy a certain number of books. Like, okay, well, if your church purchases 20 copies. I'll come to your event for free, virtually. I'll come to your event virtually for free, or if you're in person, you feel comfortable doing that. Or just something that helps them to see themselves differently. So even like a personal audit of like, okay, these are the principles in the book. These are the things that you want as the outcome. Score yourself on this. Like, how are you measuring up to this? And this is something that I include in my book, the chapters, because and this is the teacher side of me coming in. For example, I might tell my kids, okay, well, you need to read this chapter and then answer the questions.
Uh-huh.
Some of them will do it, some of them won't. Others would need, because I don't teach right now, but
Yeah.
others of them would need to say, okay, I need to annotate this, or I need to show some kind of evidence, or maybe you include some sticky flags or sticky notes or something for them to be able to get that work done. Or maybe you give them the ability to work with a partner. So developing an accountability partner system of, okay, well, buy the book with a friend, get a buddy pack. And then that way you get some additional bonuses and perks, because it's all about that accountability and having them actually consume the content. Because if you're doing it, then you're going to get reviews that are less effective. If they leave a review, you're going to get reviews that are less effective. You're going to get less recommendations and then less completions. And so think about how you can support your readers outside of just them reading the book, and also as an extension of yourself. And so I actually have a YouTube video about this as well, of 8 ways to make $800 with your pre-order. And your original question you asked is in terms of like incentivizing them.
Uh-huh.
So the strategy I use is to host your pre-order outside of Amazon. And with that, you have the ability to be able to add extra bonuses because you know who your people are. You're not wondering who pre-ordered my book. And so you can add things that are only exclusive to the pre-order period. So there were incentives that I had that if you don't order it during the pre-order, you're not going to get it. And it's either I'm going to sell it later, or it's just not going to exist and you're not going to have it. And so letting people know like, hey, there's a sense of urgency that you need to get this if this is something you're interested in. Or, for example, the color copy, that was a surprise. So giving order folks a surprise that they didn't expect because they just assumed it was going to be black and white. Logistically, that wasn't like a huge difference for me, but it makes a huge difference for them. And so,
I can vouch for that from receiving the color copy. It was just like, whoa, like you never get a color copy of a book, but it was especially something that's teaching you like you're doing, Ashley. Yeah, it meant the world to me.
Thank you. Great. That's good to hear. Someone else was saying it helped her brain kind of process it a little bit, the color coding. And if you're listening, it's not like a children's book color copy.
Right. Yeah.
The color is used very intentionally. And so including extra little goodies that are reader centric that they can't get when they order on these other platforms. That is so key. And it could be physically inside the book, adding inserts or little book swag items. And I'm hesitant to say that because when I say book swag, people think I'm going to add every random thing that I can think of in this bundle, but intentional items. And for example, I'll give one that I include is like a little accountability card. Those who order from my site. And so it's got each of the chapters and each of the action items that are from the end of the chapter. And so that way they can check it off as they're reading the book. And so it's a nice little touch that they weren't expecting.
Yeah.
The greatest thing is to give people what they weren't expecting, over deliver in a way that doesn't drain you, but also really supports the reader is key. Because I have had times in my life where I'm like, oh, I got to give away this, and this, or I need XYZ. And I'm coming to the understanding that you don't have to overexert yourself and deplete yourself so much to be able to be helpful to others. You can do it in ways that are sustainable and ways that help you to be able to continue the work because you want to have the energy to keep going. And so finding ways that can surprise your reader that are either unexpected or that help them to really complete the tasks that are from your book are key.
Yeah. I totally agree. Like sometimes you buy a book and you have every intention of reading it, but, time gets in the way or whatever, whatever reason it is, you don't get through it. And so, yeah, if you had that extra motivation to read it and apply, especially in little steps like you provide, I think that's so helpful. So, oh gosh. So actually I knew we could talk for hours about this, but I definitely want people to check out the link in the show notes and check out Ashley's Profitable Publishing with Preorders book. And I'll even put a link to your YouTube channel because there's such great content on there as well. So yeah, you're amazing. So thank you for your time today. I'm just so thrilled you were here, Ashley.
Thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate it.
Oh gosh, I just love Ashley and hope you'll check out her book, Profitable Publishing with Preorders, and start making your plans for funding your next book launch. Thanks for tuning in to Book Marketing Mania. And as always, I'll be there for you next episode to help you reach and serve your readers one podcast at a time. See you then.